When you were born, you were slapped by the doctor, and the doctor said, "Welcome to Parrot World." Now, of course, this didn't happen, but perhaps it should have, because whether we liked it or not, well, of course, we didn't have a choice. We were all born into what I call Parrot World. Now, your parents might have been good parents, or perhaps they weren't that great, and your parents probably, hopefully, did the best they could. But anyway, everybody thinks that they have all the right answers, and your parents want you to grow up to be kind of a carbon copy of who they are, because, I mean, after all, they're right. So the programming begins from the time you were born. And when it comes to going to church, I mean, don't even think about not agreeing with everything. I mean, you just, it's right. Of course, it's right. And when you begin school, I mean, for all intents and purposes, they might as well just hand each kid a funnel. Here's your funnel. We're going to tell you what it's all about, what's right, what's wrong, and your only purpose is to accept that. You found out that the easiest way to get along with everybody was just to agree with everything, just to agree with this programming. And whatever they told you was right, whatever they told you you should do, whatever they told you you should believe, just go along with it. And because it was so prevalent, was the only thing we ever knew, a lot of us never even questioned. Of course it's right. On the other hand, if you wanted to be if you if you wanted to run into trouble, if you wanted to be criticized, if you wanted to be threatened, if you wanted to be looked at like, what are you thinking? You just had to question the prevailing orthodoxy. So anyway, the point I want to make is just simply that we are all programmed from the time we were born. Programmed by society, programmed by our parents, programmed by our churches, programmed by our schools, programmed by the media, programmed by everything around us. But what if you didn't want to be a moron? And you decided to do what Albert Einstein said, was to question, 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 question everything. What if you did that? If you wanted to really understand what was really happening and you really wanted to think about things. Well, if you were questioning, like Albert Einstein admonished us to do, you would be in a position that the 39th President of the United States said in his glorious words, "You're in deep fucking shit." And that's about the way it is. If you really wanted to have problems, just question everything. Ask people like, why do you believe that? Is that true? I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense to me. There's a better way. Do you realize it? When you start talking like that, you're in deep fucking shit in this world, in most cases. And the people that really seem to get along the best are the people that just agree with everything. Of course, everything is right. But this 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 way of thinking of being programmed, it's really detrimental in the end, and it's kind of what I want to talk about in this podcast. But just to kind of one thing I've been thinking, is that when I was a young guy, I spent a short stint in the Navy. And I'd kind of forgotten about this because it was quite a while ago. But I remember the first day that we showed up for, I guess we call it boot camp. And anyway, after they'd shaved our heads, all bald, like all of us, there was a whole bunch of us. I know 60, 70 people from all over Canada. We met at a place called Cornwallis. And anyway, they sat us down. that evening. And I remember they gave us this talk, and they said, you know, wherever you came from, you might have been low, you might have been unemployed, you might have been a black sheep, but yeah, but you might have had something, like maybe you took care of the bottles at a supermarket, so you had something. Well, now you have absolutely nothing. You're the lowest thing that walks or crawls on the face of the earth. So I guess they wanted us to understand our position. But I remember the next thing they said, and they said, no matter what your thoughts were when you joined the Navy, whether it was to get a trade or whether it was to get a job or whether it was to see the world, but you're here for one purpose and one purpose alone, and that's to kill. That's to kill. And really, the military, that's what the military really is all about. It was kind of like because they don't want you to think. Like if you were ever in battle, they don't want you to think about anything. They just want you to kill. It's kind of like you've probably seen uh, documentaries where they train dogs, and dogs to attack people, and it's like they say sick, and the dog doesn't think, it just attacks. It just attacks the person. And that's kind of what they were training us in the Navy. That when they said sick, we went out and we were to kill. And that's the way it was. But it's just like this ongoing indoctrination. It's just like this ongoing program that continues and is part of every aspect of all our lives. And this indoctrination, this programming, can be really, really detrimental. If you're struggling with addiction or codependency, I just want you to know it's not your fault. And I'm going to be talking about this in future podcasts. But today, I just want you to understand one thing. If we're going to have to recover, whether it's from addictions or codependency, one thing that is so important, especially in the light of the programming that has happened, is we have to learn to burn our fucking ships. Many, many years ago, I guess around 2,000 years ago, when the Romans invaded Britain, Julius Caesar brought his ships across the channel, and they landed on the banks of Britain. And the Celts were on the hills overlooking, and they saw the Romans come in, and they kind of, at first, they positioned their ships kind of like so they could like leave if they had to. When Caesar saw this, he commanded his men, burn the ships, which they did, which sent a message to the Celts on the hills. And they thought, what are these crazy Romans doing, burning their ships? But it sent a message of fear through them because they knew the Romans were there to conquer. They weren't going to be retreating. They were either going to conquer or they were going to die. But it also sent a message to Caesar's men that there's going to be no retreating. It was onwards to victory always, or else they would perish. So they knew that there was only one direction to go, and that was forward. This kind of is an analogy, a very true analogy. If we are going to conquer our addictions, if we're going to conquer the things that are holding us back, the one thing we have to do, and that's burn our fucking ships. We have to burn our fucking ships. And that's so important. And your ships are all the things that have been keeping you from becoming the person you were meant to be. Your ships are all the false information that you have been programmed to believe, even though almost it's all completely lies. Your ships are the denial, which are ubiquitous in every facet of our lives and everyone around us, their lives too. We have to burn our fucking ships, all the things that are holding us back. And so that's what I'm going to be talking about over the next few weeks and months. I'm going to be talking in the future about the most important word in all of recovery when it comes to addictions and codependency, and how important that word is and how it ties in with burning our ships. I'm going to be talking about 12 steps in a nutshell. It's not all that complicated, but we have to burn our ships. We have to go forward. There's only one direction, and that's to go forward. And I think I might have mentioned this already, but if you're struggling with addictions, if you're struggling with codependency, if your life is not what it's meant to be and you're struggling, it's not your fault. It really isn't. We've been programmed, and programmed to a great extent to fail. So it's really not your fault. So I'm going to be explaining these things in the upcoming podcast rather. And if you know, and it's really not all that complicated, but you have to be willing to burn your fucking ships. All those things that brought you down and crippled you. And I'll just telling you, for me, it's been the most exciting journey I've ever been on. And I know it can be for you too. So anyway, that's it for today. So we'll see you next time.